Yeah, you guys. I don't know.
Yeah, well, actually, Adam just was working on something. They're coming later.
Okay.
We had trouble finding a breadboard. So we were downstairs, but we got it. You found what's it called? Acid mixer? Yeah, so from that, you can Bluetooth stuff.
Are you most of the way done though?
Zero.
See, we're on like this
Yeah,
one
that's
method.
okay.
Everything else was described pretty well, I think. And then this one method was just like, yeah.
That's a pretty accurate
Very often,
indication.
yeah. So I'm going to be bowing down to the great Adam Overlord. Hopefully, right insights. I can never tell if he like appreciates like the compliments we give him, or if he's just like, yeah, I know.
So I never asked, I should have, what time limit frame are we looking at?
There's not a hard time. Normally I'm meetings go until about 8 to 9, somewhere in that range. So
Okay. Yeah. I will probably be stretching it to an hour. So it sounds like you guys have plenty of other stuff to do anyway.
So they go on and work on projects afterwards.
Okay. Are we ready whenever, or do we want to wait a few more minutes?
Probably a few minutes.
Okay.
Usually the back rows have.
people usually trickle in 3 or 4 minutes after.
Okay.
Wearable tech, that sounds like fun. We'll probably have lots of tests.
It's super topical too, just because as we're representing increase so much.
I have some silver embedded fabric.
Wearable
You're gonna
tech.
make, yeah, wearable, if that's what you're talking about. We're gonna try, like, we have some EMG sensors and things like that, but like flex your muscles and control
What
your
if you made like a
arteries.
shirt that just like collected the static charge from you?
And
And then like stored it in like a cell, and then you could just like be like a chaser. Yeah.
Portable taser.
I could really use that just because I get electrocuted every time I try to leave our office.
I should be like, I really like tasing people.
Well, it'd be good because you wouldn't get shocked, but I would mainly use it just to tase people.
I feel like you can go to like type on the keyboard and just fry it.
Yeah, you'd have to grind yourself.
Adam, there's plenty of room.
How long have you been
in front
teaching
of us if you want to come in here.
About 15 years.
Just hold Adam.
I said Alex, didn't I?
I thought you looked familiar, but I graduated in '97, so it's been almost 18,
Here when you were
almost 18 years now. So maybe I just made that up in my
Social
mind.
cues, like two cues talking to each other.
Shut up.
It's a good response. Just shut that down.
So is this candy for all of us?
Yes, there's a candy for anybody who's still
What do you want, Matt?
That's
Voluptuous figure. You want something? His voluptuous figure. If you don't eat it, I'm going to scream.
throughout the entire first day.
No, I'm not. I was trying to talk for just.
Thank you.
Not only slightly to take away from the presentation.
A little bit.
So, yeah.
Yes.
One of my favorite snacks is to go get like the 2.5 pound bag of cereal.
This one's painful.
Really cheap. Yeah. Apple Jacks flavor. I eat that. Literally indefinitely. Like that it just never fills me up and it never runs out.
You miss.
Too hard not to. You know, actually, it's 100% of the shots you don't take.
That's not actually true. It's like a kill death ratio. If you don't die, if you don't play the game, your ratio doesn't go down. Like if you just play one game, shoot a person, then just leave, So you get one
What if you
kill,
die before then? I
then
have to
you,
take the shot. See?
but then you just don't play anymore, and you're not
But you still
missing
took the
those.
shot.
It is quite.
So you tell me when you're ready to start, and we can start.
Yeah.
We're probably
Ready to
well
go.
advanced. Yeah.
Give my trick win here at the end.
And Chris, you're streaming, right?
We're all good to go.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks for inviting me. My name is Jamie Holman. I am from Engage Mobile, Kansas City. I'm going to be talking about wearable tech. I'm probably going to stand up a little bit and face around and get rid of some nervous energy. I promise that I've only got about 20 slides, so you won't be sitting here listening to a lecture the entire time. You probably saw me bring up Xcode there because I want to walk through a watch app that we're working on, and just to show you some high-level stuff on that. It's pretty neat. But first, I want to ask everybody why they're here. And I know you're here because you're a member of the Mobile App Development Club, but why are you a member of the Mobile App Development Club? This is going to be interactive, so don't be shy or it's going to take forever.
I guess I'll start because I don't know. I joined the Mobile App Development Club because in high school I took a lot of college classes, and there's a local community college that focused in iOS development, and so I kind of started programming with mobile apps, and I really loved it, and I still love mobile development. So
You started programming with Objective-C?
Yeah.
You are amazingly resilient.
I love Objective-C. I don't know why people dislike it.
Have you used it without automatic reference counting?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's real Objective-C then. Anybody else?
I joined it because I went to the open house thing one of the first weeks, and actually it's the first person I talked to. And I also just wanted to kind of get involved. I mean, I knew nothing about it, so.
Awesome.
I've always had an interest in mobile development. Have a few ideas. Been around.
Cool. Who's here just for the candy? Anybody?
It's not advertised.
It's what?
Oh, is it not advertised?
that would help
Candy.
increase attendance, wouldn't it? So what do you guys, I know Ashley said iOS, what else have you guys played around with? Is it mainly Android or other iOS or?
Ashley is the main iOS
Yeah.
person here.
Android, Windows Phone, Cordova.
Played around a little bit with Swift.
Okay.
A little bit of Android.
I've been trying to come up with a reason to shift us to Swift. But once you kind of get ingrained in something, it's hard to get out of a habit. You said Windows Phone? Why Windows Phone?
Contracted to do it for companies.
Somebody paid me to. Always a great answer. I actually, and you see, we'll see I'm going to run through a quick bio, but I worked at Garmin for 9 years in Kansas City, and I did about 1.5 years of Windows Phone. I really liked the platform. I liked the language. And we put an app out in the store to sell at either $40 or $60 a pop, and you'll be surprised we didn't sell very many. I think you could put a $60 app in the iOS store and you probably wouldn't sell very many. But I really enjoyed it. People laugh. The only thing I didn't like is I couldn't find any apps I liked. And this was, granted, 2010 or 2011, so it's been a while. But why Android instead of iOS for the majority of you?
I have an Android phone.
Yeah.
It's expensive
Better.
to do iOS for a student.
Yeah.
You can do it, you just can't put it on hardware, right? So,
Well, I mean,
and then
getting a Mac.
Oh, very true. Very true. I've actually been working in iOS for over 5 or 6 years. I've never bought one. Employers always buy one, so I never think of that. Okay, good to know. Just like to have a little background. So let's start. We've already been here. This is what I want to run through tonight. Just an introduction of me, why you should trust me, or maybe you shouldn't. A brief history of mobile technology, and I will try to keep it brief, but since most of you probably don't remember life very well before the iPhone, we'll see what happened way back when in the late 90s. Just a little bit of a discussion between Google Glassware and the Apple Watch, and then an Apple Watch app more in depth. Run over, and I put questions on here, but please speak up if something comes up that you're thinking of it. Speak up. I welcome any questions you have. I can't promise I'm going to come up with a good answer. but I'll do my best. And then lastly, I want to advertise for our internship program that we're having at Engage Mobile. I told them that we're probably about 3 or 4 months too late to get good interns, because a lot of people get internships now in October and November, but thought I would throw that out there anyway when we're done. We'll keep going. All right, as I said, my name is Jamie Homan. I was a CIS major here at K-State way back in the dark ages of 1993 to 1997. I was actually the first class that was in the CIS, that the CIS department was in the College of Engineering. So it was a really good bump for the whole department, because there's a lot more money in engineering than there is in arts and sciences. So that was interesting. My current role is mobile architect at Engage Mobile, and I'll go through and kind of discuss what my role is as a mobile architect and what Engage Mobile does. Previously, I was a software engineering team leader at Garmin for 5 years. Before that, I was a software engineer at Garmin for 4 years. And while I was in both of those roles, I was doing mainly C++ development, and then got into Objective-C, Java, C# when my group got into the Android, the Android, iPhone, and Windows Phone world. Before that, C++ software developer at a couple of different companies, did some independent stuff before that. It's all been in Kansas City, so that's where I live now. My family. I grew up about half an hour west of here, so got to come into town, have dinner with my parents. Pretty cool. So what does a mobile architect do? Well, let's first start with what Engage Mobile does. Engage Mobile was founded about 4 years ago by a man named Darren Clausen. He has 2 business partners now, so if I refer to as the guys or the bosses, that's who I'm talking about. I do encourage you, if you feel like tweeting about what I'm saying, be gentle, but you can tweet at Engage Mobile Now. That's our Twitter handle. I would ask someone who brought their phone to take a couple pictures while we're doing this. They want to post those and talk it up a little bit on social media. But anyway, Engage Mobile was founded 5 years ago. I think it's 5 years ago. And we tried to assist companies to develop their mobile strategies, how they can leverage mobile technologies, and help them develop their applications, their infrastructures, their server environments, pretty much everything they may need for their to make their mobile strategy successful inside their company. I thought it was a very unusual type of business because we have 9 people in our company now. And when I started, I was the 5th, but we have 9 people in our company, and 8 of them are non-technical, but we're a technology company. And the way we're doing that is we have me, and then we contract out every technology we use. We're technology agnostic, so I've gotten to dabble in iOS and Android for sure, some C# development work, SQL Server, we do Linux, we do MySQL. Yesterday I spent about 4 hours learning just enough about Titanium app seller development to be dangerous, and hope I didn't mess anything up with that project. But all of our actual development work is contracted out. A lot of it is overseas, some of it is local. It just depends on how we find people, what kind of good price point we can get, and how do we make the margin we need to make our profits. I was not thrilled about working with overseas development. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to do any of that. Work with people remotely, don't speak your language, don't have your time zone. Because I've never found them to be that terribly effective, but I've been pleasantly surprised. They've been more effective than I've thought. They're still probably do things maybe in 2 to 3 times longer than it would take us, but when they cost 1/5 of what they pay us, then the math kind of works out there. So before I started, the people who were working there would outsource all aspects of their design, development, everything to these contractors. And then when I started, then I brought some of that in-house. So my role is designing mobile solutions for various technologies in various industries. We work with healthcare a lot. We work with animal health. We work with, what are some other companies we're working with right now? We work with a company that makes corrugated displays for Walmart. I mean, just everything we do is across various industries, wherever we can sell into and make a difference in their business. I get to design not just the mobile solutions, but also the server solutions, including database design, API design. I don't mind most of that. I don't think it's the strongest thing I do, but it's really good to be able to cross both boundaries, to be able to work both sides of it. You get to have a really good amount of leverage there. I do get to mentor and evaluate contract developers, and if and when we hire developers in-house, that will be part of my role too. Did a lot of that at Garmin, so very familiar with that. I really enjoy it. It's really cool to see people learn and develop their skills as they're working side by side with you. One of the favorite things I get to do is prototype and evaluate new technologies that are either new or new to us. When they said, "Hey, this Apple Watch stuff is released, and the actual watches are coming out in a month, and we want you to get into that and figure out what it is," it's cool. That's awesome. I get to learn a lot of cool stuff there. The one thing I did run into that, just FYI, if you start to get into this, it's so new that there's not a lot of tutorials out there. There's not a lot of good existing art, so you kind of have to drill your way into it. And a lot of what's out there now is in Swift. So whoever said they were learning Swift, yeah. So that's a really good place to be, apparently. Not that it's tough to translate in your mind from Swift to Objective-C, but just something interesting there. I also get all of the difficult bug fixes and questions. So if we've been running a bug past our developers for 2 or 3 days, then I get to dive in and figure out how it works. I think I was a good fit for this role because I've been in app development for quite some time, and I get to have a real good view. I think I have a good mind for all of the big issues that each one of our projects takes. So in essence, why should you trust me? Why should you listen to me? Well, I've had a pretty successful career in mainly mobile development for the last 17 years. You guys are gonna say, "What's mobile development 17 years ago?" Well, we'll get into that. I pride myself on being very pragmatic in my career. I have no use for fanboys, people that go cheer because Apple, did X and Y, or people that absolutely hate them. I don't want holy wars. None of that is useful to me. I don't do this because it's something. I don't primarily do this for enjoyment, although I do enjoy my job. I do it because I want to make money for myself, and to do that, I have to make the people who I'm developing the software for successful. And if that means that they want to go off and use Windows phones or a Windows tablet or something for their job instead of an iPad, and they have a business or a technical justification for it, bring it on. Let's do it. I kind of pride myself on being a forest seer, and for that, by that I mean I like to see the big picture. I don't try to get down too deep in the weeds anymore in terms of, should we be allocating memory like this? Should we be naming our variables like that? I did that for quite some time, and I'm kind of done with that level of detail. I still can if I have to, but I like to be able to see the bigger picture on how an entire technology solution is going to fit together and how it's going to solve the business needs that my client or whoever I'm working for is going to need. Part of being a fanboy, part of my disdain for fanboys is my skepticism, which is well earned. After you've been in an industry for 17 years, you kind of know what's BS and what's true. Some of the things I was automatically skeptical about was Google Glass. I think we kind of all see where that ended up. Siri, I think my problem with Siri isn't that nobody uses it, it's that it was built to be this gigantic, solve all your problems for everything, and people kind of use it. And I think that's kind of the way it is with voice-activated technology all around. What do you guys think? Do you think that that voice recognition technology is going to be something that's huge coming up?
They need a good breakthrough in it.
I agree.
There's just too much holding back.
I think beyond technological limitations, there's also just societal limitations. People don't want to talk to their machines yet. I'm not saying we'll never get there, but if you're even just at your house or you're out at a restaurant or something and you're talking to your machines, you get kind of looked at. Kind of funny still. The Segway, I just threw that in there because I think those machines are funny. Really? We can't do this. So, and Twitter. Now Twitter, it's huge. It's been very successful if you measure it one certain way. If you measure it off the amount of money they've made, it's been a giant failure. If you measure it off of a lot of the Twitter wars and a lot of the stupidity that flies around Twitter, I suppose there's nothing you could, if you're going to open up a platform like this, that you can't get away from that. But I think, I personally am not a Twitter user. That's why my handle isn't up there. I think it's kind of ridiculous, and I think it's somewhat destructive in a lot of settings. But keep that in mind as we get to the next slide. I also wanted to throw out there that I earned my master's in software engineering. Keep that in mind as we get to the next slide. Or should you trust me? So one of the things that kind of bothers me about the 9 years I spent at Garmin is that we didn't have any huge product that were successes. Now, if you're familiar with the Garmin history, they made a ton of money off of machines that you would buy and put in your car and put it on the dash, put on the windshield. That's where like 60% of the revenue was in most of the 2000s. I never worked on any of that. I worked on pocket PCs and Palm devices and apps that would run on your phone. And how many people have ever bought a pocket PC or ever seen one?
Both of my parents had.
They had pocket PCs?
Well, I don't know if it's the same thing you're talking about, but like before,
Pilots,
yeah, like Palm Pilots.
Okay, Palm Pilots are different. They actually had some measure of success before the Pocket PC came out. Pocket PC was the Windows version. Palm Pilot was the Palm version.
I think my dad had a pocket PC.
Oh, really?
Still.
And back then they were cool. And we'll go through why they didn't work so well, but we'll get to that. So here's some of the things I was skeptical about that maybe didn't work out so well for me. iPads, I didn't get it. They came out. I said, "What are you doing? Why would you want to carry something around that small that is smaller that you can't type on, but it's too big to fit in your pocket?" It seemed like kind of a weird in between. And now you'd have to pull mine out of my cold dead fingers. Love the thing. Facebook, I'm not on Facebook either. Maybe that's because I'm old. That's very possible. I don't know. I thought it was kind of silly when it came out, and now of course it owns the world. And then Twitter, hey, it has been a success. If you measure it one way, it's certainly been a success. So there's a few of the things that I didn't necessarily foresee quite correctly. I mentioned last time I did receive my master's in software engineering from University of Kansas. The reason I went there was because Garmin paid for it, and I didn't want to pass up an opportunity to get a free master's. And their Kansas City campus was about 2.5 miles from my house. It was run by a K-State alum, so I got that going for me. But it was actually a pretty good experience. And then lastly, I trusted Ron Prince. I believed in him, I defended him, and then what did he die? All right. Does everyone know who Ron Prince is?
No, I have no idea.
God, you guys are so young. He's the guy that coach took over for Coach Snyder when Snyder retired for 3 years.
Oh.
And flamed out spectacularly.
Yeah.
Where's he from?
Rutgers, is it?
I do not know.
That's really funny.
He's an assistant offensive line coach for some NFL team now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I bought in. I was a big Ron
He's
Prince
the
fan.
one who had Jordy Nelson as a wide receiver. Didn't really take advantage of it.
And he had a guy with a rocket arm throw it to him, or throwing the ball. And, yeah.
How that didn't work out.
Okay, brief history of mobile technology. Now I'm going to define technology as pretty broadly an application of science to everyday life. Okay, so really the first mobile technology we had were things, specifically wearable technology. We had animal skins, right? Beats you walking around naked. And then we went to clothing, and then we developed shoes and eyeglasses and watches. Technically, all these things are mobile technology that we've all come to accept. Somebody wears glasses now, you don't think twice about it. Somebody wears a wristwatch now, you don't think twice about it. Eventually, microprocessors and screens took over the world, including, the world of curved lenses and little gears that you have to line with little batteries. I wanted to start this by taking us back to the mid-90s, and we can kind of see a trend. Maybe if we walk through these, we'll kind of see some trends and some big milestones of how mobile technology got to where it is today. Maybe we can use those trends and kind of foresee how it's going to go in the next few years. I am not a technology visionary by any means, and I would love for you guys to point out things that you think are bullcrap or you didn't realize or things like that. So our first real mobile technology item was the laptop computer. And that offered you the opportunity to work wherever you wanted, use your computer wherever you wanted, or at least where you had a power source, a network outlet, a surface for your mouse, yada, yada, yada. And even the nicest laptops back in the 90s had very limited disk space, tiny screens, drained power. They were very expensive. The next big iteration of this was the handheld PC, and that's what Can you guys see my mouse there? That's what this little guy is. This kind of holds a dear spot in my heart because back in 1997, when I graduated Kansas State University, I went down to Kansas City working for a consulting company, and the first project they had they had me work on was on a Windows CE device that looked very, very similar to this. The client was a pharmaceutical company, and the people that use this technology were drug reps. Drug reps go out to doctors' offices, they hand out samples of drugs. To be able to do that, the FDA requires they get a signature saying, I'm a licensed doctor, I can hand these out, and everything's cool. They were using, originally they were using laptop computers that had touch screens. So as they handed it out and they're trying to talk to the doctor and sell them things, they would have to open up their laptop, wait for it to boot up, bring up the right screen, and then they would flip it over like this. They'd pull the screen down, and they'd let the doctor sign right there on the screen. Pretty cool technology in 1995. The handheld PC was huge because it had a very affordable, for this company, let's not get out of hand that the handheld PC did anything great overall. But for this company, it was huge for them for two reasons. Number one, the form factor was much better. You didn't have to lug around this huge, heavy PC. It had it has a much nicer touchscreen than what their PCs did. It was cheap compared to the PC. But most importantly, it was instant on. You guys probably don't remember this very well, but back in the day of laptops, you would have to turn it on, wait for this hard disk to spin up and let everything. Then you'd have to log into it, make sure. This was open the screen, flip it on, it's ready to go. This was a big, big deal for Bill Gates back in the day. I think it was either 2000 or XP that he demanded his engineers be able to get Windows to boot up, to come out of sleep faster. So it doesn't seem like a big deal to you guys because you're probably very used to this. But back in the day, Instant On was huge because you could be productive a lot faster. The next item is the Palm Pilot Pocket PC. This got it to be a little bit more pocket size, a little bit more handheld, had some on-screen keyboard. It was just kind of another iteration advance. Mobile phones. So this one here is the Palm Pilot. And I brought, actually, we have this kind of cool museum of mobile devices in my office. So I stole a few of them that are kind of the old ones, or their original ones, or things like that. And I brought them with me for you guys to take a look at when we're done. The next iteration were mobile phones. So you were connected everywhere, at least where there was coverage. And by connected, I mean voice and text, and that's it. You were happy to have it. The next iteration were smartphones. And again, I put smart in quotes because compared to what we have now, these phones would be ridiculously simple. What was cool about these is they actually provided SDKs that you could work on and develop real apps for a real phone. The previous iteration of phones, if you really tried hard and you really wanted it, you could develop a tiny little app for that 4-inch screen. But when Symbian, Windows Mobile, all these open platforms came out, it was a much bigger deal. Having the Microsoft of 2002 behind you gave it so much momentum that it became a much more approachable, much more usable technology. Next is the BlackBerry. The BlackBerry was huge because they pioneered the push emails and calendars. All of a sudden, I would know when someone emailed me right the moment they emailed me, not when I was sitting at my desk when I got home, or maybe I didn't have a computer at home, maybe when I got to the office, maybe when I got to class, wherever you could dig up a PC. A really big push in, if you'll pardon the pun, of the technology forward to get higher adoption of this. My picture's over here. This is one of the Symbian phones that we worked on at Garmin. This was a BlackBerry. I've never worked on a BlackBerry. I don't ever want to. But that's a picture of one of the Symbian phones. Shortly thereafter, we came up with 3G service was rolled out in the US. And as you guys probably know, we're way behind the rest of the world in broadband connectivity. But this was probably in about 2005 when 3G came out. And this was truly usable data. Could you surf the web on your BlackBerry? Yeah, you could. Or on your Windows phone or on your Symbian phone. Yeah, you could. But it was pretty painful on 2G networks. All of a sudden, 3G lets you stream music, and it lets you stream, real web apps and things like that. Without it, I don't think the iPhone would have gotten nearly the adoption it did in its application in the App Store and things like that. So that was a pretty big moment. The next one is the iPhone. What the iPhone brought was entertainment everywhere, all times, because you had your music, you had some videos you could have on there. Of course, you have your games. This was, and I'm not the biggest Apple fan, this was the point where mobile technology became mainstream. BlackBerry, yeah, you'd see their celebrities, with their BlackBerry prayer, that's what they call the BlackBerry prayer pose. But this is when your mom got a phone, right? This is when your mom got a smartphone. The other two things it really brought, which I have come to learn at my previous two jobs, it was the first one that had a real camera that you could really use. Now, almost every project I do, it's amazing, has some use for pictures or video or both. It's just incredible. And the other thing it got was location aware. Of course, that was a big deal at Garmin. Garmin had been kind of leading that charge for about 10 years, and the iPhone swoops in and says, yeah, we can do that too, and you don't have to have special algorithms. We did it all for you. It was a very disruptive moment at Garmin. It was kind of scary. I'm not sure I have these last two in chronological order, but I think the first Android phone came out before the iPhone, but whatever, we won't split hairs here. What was cool about the Android is all the pleasures of the iPhone without all the rules. You could do whatever you wanted on your phone, basically. It was a lot easier to get apps into a store and published and things like that. Plus, it was more affordable, as we've already talked about. Did you guys know, and I actually brought one of these, I found one in the office. This is the original iPhone. See how thick that bad boy is? Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell from that picture. I'll get that out later. And then finally, another big moment was plentiful public Wi-Fi. We kind of take it for granted now. If you go into a restaurant or you go into anywhere and they don't have Wi-Fi, you're like, what the heck? What can I connect to? But the big contribution here was the cheap, fast, reliable data. I don't believe the iPad ever would have worked. I don't think I'm saying anything revolutionary here. I don't think the iPad ever would have worked without Wi-Fi. I think that was the key that made an iPad actually work. An iPad is also computing for everyone. Number one, it's a lower price point. Number two, everybody uses it. My 4-year-old daughter uses it. My 68-year-old mother uses it. Everybody in between uses an iPad and loves her iPad. After that, the next one was kind of Google Glass. This literally took the tech out of your hands. You didn't have to be holding something or have to find a pocket for it or something like that. It was a pretty revolutionary concept. And then finally, the Apple Watch. Wearable tech that people don't hate. I think I should copyright that. And we'll go through why the Apple Watch is a pretty big deal here later. I wish I could have gotten one of those. And I asked my boss, hey, any chance, we could get our hands on the early Apple Watch, and he just laughed and laughed and laughed. So yeah. So what are our trends? And you guys jump in here if I forgot something. Been a little busy, worked on this a little bit late at night. So if I missed something, I apologize, but please speak up. Certainly it's smaller and more powerful. We all know that. We all know that that's where all computing has gone since the beginning of time. The first computers were the size of the gymnasium, and they were, off in a building that got locked up that no one could ever see. Now that it all is tiny and it sits in the palm of your hand, or on your wrist, or on your face. All this technology got way more immediate too. It was all immediately on. How useful would your phone be if every time you wanted to check your text messages or check your Clash of Clans battle or whatever, that you had to turn it on, sit there, wait for it to go through a few screens, and 2 minutes later it's ready to roll. No one would use that. It's immediately connected. Wherever you go, your phone's connected. Unless you're out in my hometown, which is a little out there a ways, but not a great data connection out there. But normally, you're always connected to Wi-Fi. And if not, you're always connected to the internet somehow. It's immediately ready. It comes on really fast. It's got all your stuff on there. It's downloaded all your email already. It's gotten all of the status updates for all of your apps and everything. So it's immediately ready. It's immediately useful. It's ready for us to go. But at the same time, it's also gotten more distant. Where does all the real work happen for your apps? Who here has written apps that have incredibly complex algorithms to do, to do scientific experiments with or something, right? Sure, we have incredibly complex algorithms to draw pretty screens and things like that. But the real genius of almost every app is on the server, right? There's not a lot of apps that don't use any network connection at all that are non-trivial. I call them fart apps at work. Oh yeah, you did an app. It's a fart app. Congratulations. But we'll see that as we get into wearables, we're going to have kind of another layer between us and our servers. So you can see that these apps are still getting more and more distant from the actual content of the functionality, or where the functionality happens. And our key to all this is to find a balance between these two. Any questions? Any comments? I feel like I'm going fast, but it's already 7:30. So, okay. So what happened with Google Glass? Does anybody here? I've been kind of making a joke out of it, but does anybody here think Glass was a successful endeavor for Google?
A little bit. I think it failed mostly the same reason why Google Plus failed. It was very exclusive. It was. I forget how they released it the first part. It was like
$1,500.
Well, it was like before that even.
There was an insider program.
Yeah, it was some insider program, and I don't know. I've heard that there was a lot of success among research. A lot of researchers liked it. For obvious reasons.
Have you guys ever seen one out in public?
Mhm.
Anybody? Seriously?
Yeah.
Where?
Hackathon.
Wow, that's not.
Well, I mean, he wore it out when we went out and stuff. So.
Has anybody seen one not at a nerd convention? Fall affection. I seen it once. I was walking through the grocery store and I walked by some guy and he was wearing it. I actually did this. I was shocked that somebody would wear that out in public. It did, and I didn't realize until I was doing a little research for this presentation, but there were times when celebrities were doing selfies with their Google Glass. It was really cool. And then for some reason, it just dive bombed off a cliff. So why was this not successful? And I'm going to go run through my list of points. I'd love to hear you guys, what your guys' idea is when I'm done. Why was it not a success, even though Google they sunk a ton of money into this? Well, first of all, it was too immediate, right? It was too in your face. It was literally in your face. And when it's in my face and I'm talking to you, now it's in your face, right? Who wants somebody else's technology they're not comfortable with literally in their face? I don't even like it when my kids are sitting there playing on their phones when I'm trying to talk to them. Much less, if they're wearing on their face, I don't know if they're listening to me or not, right? I think that was the big deal. The input mechanisms were insufficient. Again, I've never actually used it because right as I joined Engage, the whole Glass thing was kind of tailing off. Engage was very excited about it when I joined. I didn't get it. I think it was more marketing than anything. But mainly it was voice recognition. Again, we've kind of talked about how it's not great yet. It's doable. It's not great. It was suspicious.
I was going to say, that was one of the first things that I can think of where you could initiate it with just voice. Now there's some phones that, iPhone, if it's plugged in, you can initiate it with voice.
Yeah.
So I guess it was a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good point. It was suspicious. One of the things that everybody found out and immediately didn't like about Google Glass is that it had a video camera on it all the time. So if we're sitting there talking about, if you're sitting there talking to somebody about something very personal, how do you know you're not being recorded? Is that cool? I mean, I think people were uncomfortable by it.
One thing I heard about that, I've got an argument for it, was that why would you buy a $1,500 device to record someone when you could get like a $7 camera pen on eBay?
Fair. I suppose you're going to get better resolution. You're going to get a better recording out of it, but that's a good one. Another problem was it was distracting. Where did my bag go? I should have these set out. Oh, I think in the wrong pocket. What's the only thing you can think about me right now?
You're in the Terminator.
What is that thing? What is he doing? Why is it there? Yeah. I think these are dead, but I'll pass them around after we're done. I think the battery's dead, so we can't turn them on. But we can. Another thing is, like many of Google's projects, it never left beta. It was just kind of hanging out there. And that's what Google does. They just put it out there. They see if it works. If they don't, in beta, they put it out there in beta. They see if it works. They don't offer any support for it. If it takes off, if it has some possibility of doing good things for their company, they'll release it for real and start supporting it. If not, it just kind of lives in this never land. And that's what happened with Glass until they came out and kind of put it out of its misery. Are you guys familiar with Wear? Google Wear? Okay, I'm not very familiar. I wasn't even going to mention it, and I asked my boss to review this. He's like, "Well, why don't you talk about wearable?" I said, "I don't know anything about Wear." But Wear is kind of, if you don't at first don't succeed, try again sort of thing for Google. It's Android for a watch, right? Yeah.
Was it Adam?
It's okay.
Oh, is that one? Oh, okay. Cool. What do you use it for?
Mostly, I have to say, it's the amount of time, like before I got it, there were a lot of times where I'd get my phone out, like check to see if I have text or check the time or something, and then immediately put it away, like not get past the lock screen. That's now what I use the watch for, not like in-depth stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I have to say, because they made it relatively rely on voice recognition, like in order to start stuff, you can either like click it and then scroll a whole bunch through this tiny little list, or you can do voice recognition, and I don't really like that. So I feel like, yeah, the whole voice recognition thing is not super great, but they relied on it a little bit, I think too much with this.
Yeah. And we'll get to how probably Apple Watch does that better.
Mm-hmm.
My wife wanted one of those. My wife is not a techie, but she drives me crazy. She takes her phone and she keeps it on vibrate or whatever at work, and then she puts it in her purse. And by God, if you want to get in contact with her after that, you have to be in her physical presence and talk to her, because it sits in her purse, it buzzes, she doesn't hear it. No chance of getting her on the phone. She said, "Why don't you get me a watch and it'll show up on my watch when it's ringing." I would if I thought there was any chance you would wear something that nerdy.
I have to say though, on that point, so when I got this, my mom said pretty much the same thing. She said, "Oh, now you'll actually answer my texts." I think it's actually made it worse, because I'd pull on my phone like while I was like programming or something, look and see I have a text, like, "Oh, I'll answer that in like 2 minutes," and like 4 hours later, I was like, "Oh, I didn't respond to that text." And now it's even faster. I look at it on my watch. I'm like, "Oh, I'll respond to that." Don't even pull up.
Really?
And then it's 4 hours later again, and I'm like, "Right."
Do you think you'd respond to it if you could easily do something and talk to it and it would?
Yeah, I can like reply through text.
Does it work? Does the voice
For some
recognition work?
reason, it just, because I can do the whole like text mom, say my message, but it like doesn't auto capitalize things. It won't be like, "Oh, you said text mom, and then this is where your message start. Let's capitalize that first word." It doesn't do things like that. I'm like, why wouldn't you do that? It's weird.
So it kind of sounds like there's two issues here. One is that you don't want to text your mom.
That is.
And the second is that there are some I was being silly, but there's some behavioral limitations and there's some technology limitations. Interesting. I'm ADD. I feel ADD enough as it is now, because if my phone buzzes a little bit while I'm at work, I'll stop whatever I'm doing. And when you're in the zone and you're really in what you're doing, the absolute worst thing you can do is go get distracted. And I'm afraid it would be even worse with the watch.
What do you think about the future of the Google Glass? Now that it kind of is out of beta.
I'll shut it down.
They killed it.
Well, they killed the Explorer program, but I read that they hired the Nest CEO to take over the project.
They bought Nest, and they probably made him take over the Glass project. I don't know. I am loath to doubt Google, but I just can't see it. Not in the next 15 or 20 years. And that could be, that's probably ridiculous. Who knows where we're going to be in 15 or 20 years. The next 5 years, I have a hard time seeing it. What do you guys think?
I feel like it almost, I don't know, from what I've heard, it was almost never meant necessarily for like just public use like our cell phones are. It was more for like these kind of fancy research-y type some things. I feel like that you could do some really cool stuff with that. Almost more like towards like just virtual reality or something.
And that's what's going to be huge.
Yeah.
So I think they need to make it work with virtual reality. Are you guys familiar with Mobile World Congress?
Mm-hmm.
So every February in Barcelona, Spain, every big mobile company in the world, except Apple, gets together, and that's where they debut all their products, all the processors and the screen manufacturers, the processor manufacturers and the screen manufacturers, plus the Motorola's and the Samsungs and those guys in the world. And this year at Mobile World Congress last month, apparently virtual reality was huge. So if they can work that into Google Glass, I think maybe they would have a chance. I'm not a visionary enough to see where virtual reality is going to impact us on a day-to-day basis outside of games. Probably will. I just don't see it yet. So I had fun putting this together. When you see somebody wearing these things, what's your first impression? Do you guys know who the guy in the top right corner is? All right. Geordie LaForge is wearing the cool scanner thing because he lost his eyesight to get some superpowers. Is it this guy down here in the corner? Gosh, I hope not. Is it somebody that's tracking you all the time through the video camera? Or is it just a complete distraction to everybody? Or is there something that I didn't come up with here?
I think it's kind of cool. But
Do you? I don't mean to trivialize it. I'm just, I think personally it was a failure for Google, and I kind of want to know why it didn't live up to their expectations.
yeah, I mean, I think it's cool, but it's not ready,
Not ready.
or we're not ready.
There you go. Or both, right?
I think the camera is definitely like a really big aspect of it, especially like you said, like we're not ready for that. Like a camera would be pointing at us constantly. I think the research point was really good. Like it could work really well in research, but they totally marketed it towards like just
like
regular
their ad
people.
campaigns
Yeah.
were just straight like normal people,
Exactly.
like, skydiving and stuff, and it turned out to be were like research people who were like, okay, Glass record this, so they could, instantly like record what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. We don't need our friends and our family recording us at all times. That's why we have the NSA, right? But my company, when they were trying to promote this, they were trying to turn a buck off, and that's why we exist. We exist to make money for our owners and for ourselves. The only demo they did that resonated with anybody was they put it on somebody doing something cool and showed the video. The biggest success we had is one of our president has some link back into IndyCar racing. So he got one of the IndyCar drivers to put it on, and not just the drivers, but a bunch of pit crew to put it on and do a couple laps at Indianapolis. And we produced a video out of it. It was really, people really enjoyed it. But I don't think that's the full power. I mean, obviously that's not the full power of Google Glass. It was just kind of the thing that resonated easily with people.
So that like the GoPro cameras are taking over that.
Right. Yeah. It's a wearable GoPro. Or it's a smaller GoPro, I guess. GoPros are reasonably wearable as it is. Okay, so what's different about the Apple Watch? Well, first of all, it's literally at arm's length. You don't have to have it in your hands, but it's not in the way all the time, and people don't get freaked out about it. It seems to me like Apple, doesn't seem to me. It's obvious that Apple is very, very serious about this. It's their next niche they're going to try to fill. They think everybody is their consumer, and everybody needs one, just like your iPhone, just like your iPad. But more importantly, equally as important, it's backed by a lot of industry leaders. I didn't get it when all the rumors were swirling around, and then they introduced it with some of the things that you could do with American Airlines, or I think it's the Hilton hotel chain. Instead of a key card now, they'll load it on your watch, and you just swipe that, you get close to your door, and it'll unlock your door. It'll get you through the check-in line at the airliner faster. Okay, now we're talking. That's pretty cool. Anything Nike is behind, is going to do well. ESPN has been in mobile technology very, very early. They were a leader there. I threw the New York Times in there. The New York Times is old and stodgy, and they're in on this. Well, now we have something that's interesting. They also piloted a lot of forms of input. Yes, they have a touch screen, but they also have the crown button, which kind of addresses what you were saying. If you want to scroll through something, apparently the crown button is just, and you scroll through it, and it gets through really fast. Kind of hard to test on a simulator, so I don't have anything definitive that I can reference on that. But you can do a lot of cool things with the crown button too inside of your app. It's got a Siri, and Siri's getting better. People are using it, and it's improving. Heart rate sensors, all sorts of biometric, or not all sorts of, a few biometric sensors, which are pretty neat too. Now, my boss, Darren, the owner of our company, says you don't really know technology until you know its limitations. So what are the limitations of an Apple Watch? Well, right now, there's very, very little processing that happens on the watch. You can't run an app on your watch unless it's connected to your phone, to your iPhone. the iPhone provides all the services, and we'll see this as we get into the project I have. But all the watch does is it provides an interface that makes a call back to your cell phone. That's all it does right now. Again, it's not too immediate. It's not too close to you. It's something that you can ignore when you need to. Right now, they are intentionally keeping the user interfaces simple. I think that's going to be a tough burden to get across until we have some sort of 3D projection you can do with your watch, right? If you have a 3-inch screen, then your user interfaces are going to be pretty simple. And it's probably good that they're mandating that. And I'll show you again why that's kind of a mandate from Apple. And then a couple things that we just can't know until we get our hands on the hardware. How's the battery life going to be? Do you have to, if you use it a lot, do you have to charge this twice a day? If so, are people going to do that? I don't know. And that's always the complaint about technology, right? You could have the biggest battery that runs your phone for 3 days. Well, why didn't it run it for 4 days, right? So I think that's a legitimate question. I don't have an answer for that. Maybe it's going to be magnificent. I don't know. And I know. And by the way, I never believe them. I never believe Apple. I never believe Samsung. I never believe anybody when they say that your battery's going to last this long, because it's a lie. It's a big, giant marketing lie. And it's Siri. Is Siri going to work as well as it needs to make it really useful on your watch? Again, can't say until we get our hands on it.
Do you think the high-end models, like the $17,000 one, are going to sell too well?
Yeah, that's my biggest limitation I see.
Price?
There's cheaper
Yeah.
models. There's
Yeah.
like 200, 300
Yeah.
Oh, there are?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, I've only seen like the $10,000.
Yeah, you can get it at like 300.
Okay, I was like, if it's only 10K, there's no.
But now you got to put $300 on top of your $600 iPhone. Are you? I don't know. It's a good question. Price is a good one. I should have put that on there.
And like you think about how much people spend on watches sometimes, and all it does is tell the time and the date.
That's true too. That's true. Okay, I'm going to run through a little bit of the architecture, which kind of leads into my demo, and we'll see some of this as we get into the demo. So if you have questions, feel free to shout them out or hold on to them until we actually get into Xcode along with the code and the storyboards and everything like that. So if you know a lot about iOS development, there's different types of apps you can have. You can have the master slave. That's more of an iPad thing. You can do tabbed applications. Well, all these have to be hierarchical, meaning you start at this page and you work your way frontwards and backwards. That's all they support. Like I said previously, they have to be paired with your iPhone to work. I'm kind of interested to know what happens if you shut your phone off or you put it in a different room or something like that. Does it just show the time? Is it back to being just a regular phone? I don't know. There's three interfaces you can have with your watch app. A glance is the first one. It's just a quick view of your app's most important content. They encourage you to literally put like 2 things on the screen. It's all set in front of your logo, so you can easily tell what app is notifying you of a glance. But they limit it to 2 things. It's not scrollable, and it's got a single action. If you tap it, it launches your app. I haven't gotten the chance to get into Glance yet in the project I was working on. So if you have questions about that, I'd try, but I don't know. I'm not quite as familiar with that interface as I am the other ones. The second interface that you can use is the notification interface. So there's 2 ways you can get notifications in your iPhone app. One is the push notification that comes from Apple servers. We know about that. The second one is things you schedule locally. You schedule or push locally. So there's local notifications. There's remote notifications. All of these notifications are passed from both the local and the remote notifications are passed from your phone app to your watch app. Your watch app doesn't have to handle them, so you can ignore them and not deal with them on your watch app. But they all do have to come through your phone. You define 2 different interfaces for notifications. There's a short look, which just shows your app colors, the title of the notification. That's all it does. As soon as and it only does it for a short time. The long look has some more functionality. So it shows all the details of your notification. You can actually go through and put additional things in there so you can scroll it, you can put buttons on it, you can do some interaction with it so that, for instance, you could take a shortcut to your app. So if this long notification comes up and you say, oh, I want to do something with that, then you tap on it on a certain button and it'll jump right to that area of your app so you can deal with that notification. Well, what I thought was interesting is these are displayed automatically when the wrist is up or the short look notification is tapped. So if you see the short look notification, you're not interested, and you put your wrist back down, everything goes away, nothing happens. If you bring it up and you stare at it, then the long look notification is presented to you. So kind of a cool use of their accelerometer in there. The third way to get into your app is just the standard first screen, and we'll see that too. The layouts for your watch app are simple and linear in one direction. So to back up a little bit, in an iOS app, you're encouraged, you don't have to, but now you're encouraged to use storyboards. And each storyboard you lay out is a screen and a segue, and a screen and a segue, and a screen and a segue. So the segues take you from screen to screen. The screens have all of your controls on it and things like that. They've restricted the watch layout to you can only put controls in a linear fashion going down the screen. They do offer one control that you can put in there that allows you to do other controls horizontally, but it's very simple, it's very restricted. It reminds me of the Android linear layout for you guys who are familiar with that. I thought that was kind of interesting that they hijacked an Apple idea. The WatchKit extension is the critical piece to understanding your Apple Watch architecture. This is over here is the illustration you'll find whenever you're looking up Apple Watch applications. And this WatchKit is this very nebulous, this WatchKit extension, the screen part is this very nebulous piece of code. You're not really sure where it's running or what it's doing, but it is what you use to do the communication between your Apple Watch and your iPhone. You can see that about the only thing in your Apple Watch is your storyboard, which is your list of screens and how they're laid out, and your resources, your images and your colors and strings and things like that. That's the only thing your Apple Watch get. Doesn't get much more thin client than that, does it? I mean, that's as little as you get. Over here in the phone is where you actually have your actual code and additional resources that you can pass back and forth via the extension. WatchKit app doesn't use standard Cocoa controls, which is what the iPhone apps use. They dumbed them down, slimmed them down, renamed them. It's kind of unfortunate, but I guess it does draw a really clear line between that's what this class can do on the watch, and this other class can do something more sophisticated on the phone. And it's really there's a lot of equivalencies between the WatchKit classes and the regular Cocoa classes, so it's pretty quick learning curve. One important thing to know is that notifications are the only way to push from phone to watch. So if you want to if you want your app to notify something on your phone, it pretty much has to be a notification. You can pull from the WatchKit to the phone, you can pull to the watch from the phone using a specific API they gave you, but I kind of beat my head against the wall. I was like, how do I tell you to do the thing? And eventually figured out that you could. All right, so we're almost 8 o'clock. So I'm going to go through just a few of the things of this, a few of the items in this demo. And then give you guys a chance to ask questions, any other questions you have, and then I will go through my spiel for our internship program. So in here you can see that we have many of the things I talked about. We'll ignore the test ones right now. This is my iPhone app. This is the storyboard for it, which we're not going to look at today. This is the extension. It's got these 3 controllers. The notification controller is responsible for all the code that shows on the notification, the long look notification screen. The interface controller is the main body of the WatchKit extension. It does a lot of the processing, and then I have another controller in here because I have 2 screens. So this is for the second screen. And then inside the app, the WatchKit app, we just have the storyboard. We have a few icons, and that's it. A little bit of the bookkeeping that you have to have for every iOS app. I haven't done anything fancy with this yet, so all I did is I put our little under construction logo in here, so when it comes up on the phone, you'll know that it has a logo it can use. In here are the 3 storyboards that you have for every WatchKit app. You can have up to 3. I haven't used the glance interface, so I haven't really done anything with that yet, which is why it kind of looks boring. But this is the notification. Sorry, this is the notification interface down here. This is what comes up originally, and then once it's had time to kind of process that you're continuing to look at it, and it goes to the phone, gets some data, it transitioned to this one. So this is the static interface, which if I hadn't clicked on it, you would be able to see. And this is the dynamic interface. The top here is the main interface of the WatchKit app. What our app is meant to do is we wanted to leverage both the WatchKit and beacon technology. So we bought a few of those cheap little beacons that you can stick somewhere, and your phone will recognize that you're near this beacon. So we're kind of doing this we're purely doing this as a marketing ploy, so that we could bring people into our office and say, look, not only do we have a watch, but we've got these beacons. Stand here and it'll recognize that you're at this beacon, it'll notify you, it'll tell you how to get to this other place. So two cool kind of little technologies, but just remember this is marketing fluff. There's 2 ways you can launch your app. Let's look at the main interface first. So we'll come up here and say, run on our iPhone 6 simulator. Let's see how giant that is on the screen. And the demo gremlins are going to do something so that it doesn't work. There it comes. It's just slow. In theory. I gave a demo to clients yesterday, and it almost went on without a hitch. So all the gremlins have jumped into this demo for you guys tonight. So sorry about that.
So if you have an app on the watch, is there a separate app on the iPhone, or is it all handled in the Apple Watch app?
You have to have an app on your iPhone. I was going to show you where it is on this, but maybe it hasn't deployed correctly yet. That's why it's not working. Let's try this. I think this is the phone app. So this is the phone app with my awful off-center screen there. Yeah, I know. I was really lazy there. There we go. So this is a Take Me To app. And then all I have is just a start button that takes you to the second screen where it recognizes where you are, shows some address stuff like that. And then takes you to, and then can also say, take me to some other place. The cool part about this is that all the data being shown in here is stored in the phone app. And that's just kind of how we're showing that this is how these two connect. So none of this is hard-coded. You won't, of course it's hard-coded. It's not hard-coded because you can't put any code in a watch app. But if you, I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but you can see all of this is just stubbed out text on the screen. If we look really closely, you can see it takes a minute to bring up that. You can see it flashed with the stubbed out stuff, and then it came in. That's what it's sitting in the background, communicating with the Apple Watch app and bringing it over. So not a terribly exciting demo, but most importantly, once we get into the actual code, and I haven't looked at this in about a week, so I have to get re-familiar with it. Here's the code that I'm interested in. Open parent application. This is how your watch app calls into your phone app. This is the only way your watch app calls into your phone app. There are technically ways to share data between them in a common container and things like that. I haven't gotten into that yet, but it's how these two apps can share more static data. But when you're looking at things dynamically, this is how you do it.
So it looks a lot like a remote procedure.
Yeah, basically. It's all going over the Bluetooth. This is the data, this parameter is just a dictionary that you can populate whatever you want in there as your input parameters. And then when it comes back, it populates another dictionary here that you can go through and parse and do whatever you want with. The corresponding code for this is in. Oh, I should have brushed up on this. I got really busy today. Sorry. Right here, handle watch kit extension request. All I'm doing is I have an emhq.json file. I'm loading it in, making a dictionary out of it, passing it back. I'm not using the input parameter just because it's not something we've gotten into yet. But this runs in the app delegate of your iPhone app. So that's kind of the cool architectural points of a watch kit app. The other thing I wanted to run was the notification screen. Okay, let's see if we can do that again. So what this does is it simulates a notification being sent from your phone to your watch. The only content of my notification is which room I'm in. It's the iOS room. We have two conference rooms, one iOS, one is Android. We're very clever like that. But that's the content of the notification that I've decided to show on this screen. Two things that trip me up about this. One, this favorite is the name of a. I never took that out. It should be the name of my app. I was doing some other things with it and forgot to take this back out. Our app is called Tech2, or TMT. So this is hard coded in here, this gray background, and the only thing you can show up here is the name of your app. This is always the logo of your app. Why do they do a circle there? I guess it's the theme of Apple Watch, but you have to supply that regular square logo, and then takes it here, puts it in there, cuts the corners off. You always have a dismiss button. That makes the notification go away. And we'll look at that storyboard real fast after this too. This is a button that I put in there, and when I click on it, my goal is for this to take me deeper into the app. So right now it takes me to the home screen. I haven't gotten to it yet. I want it to take me here, or maybe even the next step after this, where I can say, take me to the Android room. I'm in the iOS room, take me to the Android room, or something like that. I just haven't done that.
So this would be great for a zoo or something. Take me to the elephant.
Yeah, a campus, right? There. But if we look at the storyboard, and I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but inside here, I cannot select any of this stuff because it's always there by default, and I cannot select this dismiss button because it's always there by default. All I can do is select these different fields. I can drag more controls in here, get rid of these, do whatever I want in between these two things, but those are always the ones there. Let's see, anything else? Oh, the other thing that I banged my head against the wall about for the longest time is I wanted to be able to set a local notification on my phone and then test receiving that notification in the Watch app and doing stuff with it. And I worked and worked and worked, and it wasn't working. And eventually I Googled it and found out they don't let you do that in the simulator yet. So the only thing you can do is fill out this APNS file that's named push notification payload. And that's what gets shown, that's what gets delivered to your Watch app. So if I call this the Android room, then theoretically when I pull this up, it says Android room there. So if you want to actually test this, the takeaway from this is if you want to actually test this right now on the iOS simulator, you're swimming upstream a little bit. It's not in a great spot yet. So just a fair warning. You can also put different things in here. For instance, I put a title in here or a button in here and display this on the title, and this is the action it takes and things like that. So you can load this up with whatever payload you want to simulate getting a notification. But like I said, the takeaway is that there's not much, you can't do the full-fledged notification thing yet. Does anybody have any questions about that? That's really that's really the main architectural points of a Watch Kit app.
So how much memory does it take up on the watch? Probably not much.
I don't know. I'm not sure how you'd measure that. So when you have a regular app running, you can see this is the memory.
Yeah.
I suspect it's of what's running on the phone, but that's a good question. I haven't looked into that yet.
Since it's just basically request reply.
Yeah, and all it's doing, I mean, all the static content is just the storyboard, which is just a bunch of XML. and the assets, your images. So
So are the F's just stored in flash memory on the watch?
yeah.
Have they released like what the hardware of the watch is?
I don't know. I haven't looked that deeply into it.
It seems they have. I know they have them posted on their store, on the Apple Store. So I'm pretty sure they're
I bet they have.
for sale or very close to being for sale.
Yeah, you can begin placing orders on April 24th. So I'm sure they probably have released some details of it. Sorry, I haven't looked those up. It's like I tell my wife when she wants me to replace something at home, hey, software engineer. That's a hardware problem. That's right. Anything else? Alrighty. So finally, and it's just getting a little bit after 8, so you guys are probably ready to go. But just wanted to advertise. I told the guys I would advertise our internship program. 5 reasons to come work at Engage Mobile for a summer internship. We do have interns doing real work. Yes, sometimes they have to go fetch lunch. Sorry, that's what it takes. But most of the time, it's real work. Like I told you before, I'm the only technical person in our office, so maybe you get to work with me. Ooh, take that for what it's worth. A cool setting. We're in a loft space in the River Market in downtown Kansas City. I don't know if you've ever been to the River Market, but it's a pretty cool area, unless you live 30 miles south of there like I do. But regardless, it's a cool setting. It's very open. Great group of people. Fantastic group of people. We work very hard. We have fun. We have a K-grader in our office, so if you're 21, then that's a bonus. It's a lot of fun. We do a lot of interesting things. It is a paid internship. We're not into slave labor. You will contribute to projects. I am excited to have somebody in there that knows what I'm talking about when I talk about memory leaks or compiler errors or why linker errors or damnation from the devil. And it's a truly great company and the hottest industry going. So if you have other questions, feel free to ask me now, ask me later. We do have a whole page on our website dedicated to it. It's engagemobile.com, and look for the internship thing. Like I said, if you're interested in an internship by this point, you probably already have one, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
You mentioned that a lot of the watch apps are getting developed in Swift, and I don't really know, I started to learn Objective-C, but it's to the point where I could just as easily learn Swift. What would your opinion be if you're learning, if you want to learn to program on iOS, which language should you focus on more?
I'm going to ask the young man up here who's done Swift. What do you think? I'll answer your question too, but what do you think?
There's pros and cons to both.
What do you think they are? I've not looked into Swift. I'm really interested as what the pros and cons are.
In some examples I've seen, you can do a lot more with a lot less code. But as far as
is Swift similar, whereas Objective-C is just built on top of regular C, or is it
it's actually has similarities to, I think, JavaScript.
Swift looks more like an interpreted language where
it's not,
but it looks more like it.
Yeah.
Where Objective-C looks more like C.
Yeah.
So Objective-C is a superset of C++.
Yeah.
If you want to do something in the middle of your .m file in C++ and C, knock yourself out. People usually don't do that, especially now with automatic reference counting. So back in the olden days of Objective-C, you had to do retain release, and you'd get memory leaks. That's a real pain in the ass. And then 4 or 5 years ago, they came out with automatic reference counting, so the compiler sits there and injects the retain releases and the auto pools and all that garbage for you. So it feels a lot more like a garbage collection. It's not a garbage collection language. It's there's no garbage collector that runs on your iOS device, but it feels more like a language where you don't just mess with all that and trip over everything that I forgot to retain here, and 5 months later 2 hours of use, your application crashes. But I think by learning Swift, you probably trade in a little bit of that power in terms of, do I want to use C to create a 64-bit variable and then flip bits, when I want to? I bet you're not going to be able to do that in Swift. I don't know for a fact. I haven't gotten into Swift deeply enough to know that. But you're probably, like I said, trading.
Do you think the market's tending to go more towards Swift, or? Like, that's what I'm interested in is,
You should just learn both.
like, 2 years from now, are there gonna be,
So here's my take on that. Here's my take on every language. Languages are easy, frameworks are hard. So if you learn Swift and you learn the Cocoa framework, you'll learn Objective-C in 2 weeks and be just fine. I think if you are interested in mobile development and you go in to an internship or a job interview and say, yeah, I've been doing Swift for a year, they're not going to kick you out the door. I think they're going to be impressed. I think they're going to be very pleased with someone who took that initiative and learned a new language. I don't think there's ever going to be a case, not ever, very rarely are you going to come across a case where you're like, damn it, I can't do something in Swift because I should have used Objective-C. I doubt that's hardly ever going to happen. I bet your learning curve on Swift is going to be a lot shorter. So, good question. I'm a Java snob. I did C++ from the day I walked in the doors here in 1993 until until we got into Objective-C and Java at Garmin in 2009 or whatever it was. So 15 years of C++. I think Java's slow and can't twiddle little bits and everything like that, so it's not my favorite language. But, it's used everywhere, and it's a good skill to have, and I mean, you almost have to have it. So.
With all apps having to be 64-bit now for iOS, is there anything you've had to go back and modify to change that?
Yes, and what we almost always trip over is we're using a SDK or a library that hasn't been updated in 5 years. And then all of a sudden you have to, and you'll be shocked to learn that your clients never call you up and say, hey, we want to deploy this. And now, yeah, so it was February 1st, right, that everything had to go 64-bit?
I'm not sure when
It was real recently that the App Store would reject you if you weren't 64-bit compatible. And your clients never call you up and say, hey, in 3 months, we're going to need this release. And then you have time to go back and say, oh, that's not 64-bit, and why not, and fix all these things. It's always, yeah, we have a problem. We need that fixed tomorrow. And that's the way it always works. So it's, in my experience, it's almost always been libraries that you then have to go find the new one. Oh crap, they're not compatible with, it's not completely compatible with the old one. Now I've got to do all these other things, or they're not available anymore, or they don't work. The new one doesn't work like you expect it to, or something like that. So it can be something that you trip over pretty easily. Just
you said you worked on some independent projects. What did that consist of?
Well, this was back in the late 90s. They weren't mobile projects. I was actually the pharmaceutical company that I was that I talked about with the handheld PC that you open up, and I was the only person that had worked on that particular app. They actually got bought and got moved to the East Coast, but they needed support for this ongoing. So they paid me to sit around and wait for them to call me with problems they would have, which sounds great, but it's actually extremely boring. So I took on some side jobs doing, I think it was BB script websites or something horrendous. It was not fun. I probably learned some stuff, but it wasn't the best work I've ever done. Anybody else? I'm going to pass out these devices, and you guys are free to take a look at them, laugh at them, whatever. Or if you need to go, my presentation is done. So. So I actually brought one of the Palm Pilots you got sitting around just because I think the little signing area there is kind of cool. And this was small back in the day. I brought a BlackBerry, full keyboard, all that sort of stuff. I brought the, I think this was called the G1. Do you guys remember why the G1 is cool?
Yeah, the flip up. I used to have one of those.
Yeah, it kind of flips over.
First
but the real reason, it's the first Google phone, yeah. And there is the revolutionary first generation iPhone.
It's the coolest screen flip ever.
I had an old BlackBerry.
Better than the
I
iPhone.
love that thing.
No, BlackBerry users would.
When you're in 8th grade and you have a BlackBerry, you're the cool kid.
We had people at Garmin that this was like 2009 or 2010 after the iPhone had been out.